Okay.
So I would say let's start. We are 3 minutes into the hour. A warm welcome to our today's Creating People Advantage webinar. A first sneak preview on the results of our large global study, as the publication itself will only be published on 30th of June. So that's kind of a really exclusive sneak preview of the most important results. My name is Philip Kolo from BCG, and I will guide you through our agenda and today's session. Let me give you an overview what we will do in this next hour. Perfect. So we will start with a very brief welcome and introduction by Bob Morton, as the president of the WFPMA, and Jens Bayer, managing director and senior partner at BCG, kind of the two major partners running this study, giving a little bit of background on the collaboration and the study kind of setup, how we run it, what it covers. My colleague and I will give you a first insight on the key findings, what were the results, but we will keep it very brief. And already at this point, it is good if you have questions. So keep these questions, pose these questions, because we would like to have a panel discussion on these topics in this, basically for the majority of the time. We have a broad set of experts from BCG and from the WFPMA to really reflect upon these results, what it means for different countries, what it means for different companies. And we are very happy if you kind of also liven up the discussion with your questions. And finally, naturally, we'll have a quick wrap up, a short outlook, what we basically learned from today's sessions and what the presentation will bring in the when it comes out. So to really start, Bob, Jens, the floor is yours for a brief introduction.
Right, thank you. Jens, I'll go first this time.
Okay.
We're switching around a bit. Well, first of all, a welcome to everybody who's joining us for this teaser webinar. I'm delighted that you're able to join us today. As you know, there's some context to this in that, you know, over the last 18 months, in response to the pandemic, people, professionals around the world have stepped up massively, I think, to support people in organizations and adapting to new ways of working. And HR is now at the front and center of organizations as we look to the future beyond the pandemic. And I have to say, personally, I'm incredibly proud of what HR professionals around the world have managed to achieve. And HR is now shaping the new future, and the profession is leading change to improve working lives. However, as we look to the future, it's important that the profession continues to lead change and doesn't slip back into traditional ways of thinking and working that were prevalent before the pandemic. And the 2021 Creating People Advantage study is therefore very timely and provides critical, quantitatively supported guidance for people management professionals and all other leaders, including CEOs, who are aiming to build a future-proof workforce and a workplace to support the execution of their company's strategy and the success of their business. And have the next slide, please. And the purpose, the aims of the study are very straightforward in that it's to holistically assess the status quo of topics that are most urgent in terms of improving HR departments' capabilities around the globe. It's also to provide in-depth perspectives and best practice on key topics. And this is a truly unique survey, by the way, because we're looking very specifically at 9 clusters and 32 overall topics. And it's to enable HR leaders to drive future business success. Next slide, please. So it's a partnership. It's a unique study that's going to provide some deep insight into HR capabilities now and what we need to develop as a roadmap for the future. It's also unique in the collaboration between BCG, who have tremendous expertise and depth of knowledge and experience in this area, but also with the World Federation, who We have 5 continental associations. We have something like 90 national organizations representing over 660,000 HR professionals around the world. So this is truly a unique and very deep study. And I'm just very pleased that we're able to join with BCG, and I'm looking forward very much to the results, which I think will help us to provide an agenda for action, not just for our places of work, but it will provide an agenda for action in developing the profession for the future as well. So over to you, Jens. Thank you.
Yeah, and actually this study has quite some history. So the first Creating People Advantage study was published in 2007, 2008. At that time, it was a global study like ours today with more than 4,700 participants. We then launched like jointly a European study, a worldwide study again. And actually the last study that was published was in 2016. It was like a digital format. And then we decided to relaunch this year's study. And we must say, if you go to the next slide, this has been actually the largest HR study in the world. It has been the largest Creating People study, but it's probably one of really the largest HR studies overall. We have more than 6,600 answers from more than 113 countries. We are covering actually all major regions: Africa, Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, and North America. And we consciously decided not only to talk to HR people, but also to talk to our internal customers to understand what is the non-HR perspective on the importance of different HR topics, so that we can really look at the topics from 2 perspectives. We have a broad coverage of different industries and managerial levels, so we are able actually to cut and dice the results really specific to countries and also to industries to come up with the insights that you need to navigate in those difficult times as an HR professional. But let me stop talking now and let's get into the content. And it's a sneak preview, much more to follow when the report is published. But over to you, Steffi and Philip.
Perfect. So let's step into it. Bob already outlined that we have a very kind of detailed perspective on HR topics. So what you find here are the 32 people management topics that are the basis of all our survey. It ranges from people and HR strategy to basically all the functional topics in HR function is following: talent acquisition, people development, performance, to topics like digital and IT. So how these processes are brought to the employees and the managers, and the HR operating model overall. So how is the HR function delivering its services? So we can have a very fine-tuned perspective on all these different topics, and then naturally we know they are all important, they are all need to be run, but given it's so many, our study, or the Creating People Advantage study, wants to give you some guidance and help to do some prioritization. So what are really the topics you need to watch out and to prepare in the coming years to really make a difference in people management? So we raised 2 major questions along these 32 topics. The first one was to rate the current capabilities of the given organization. And on the next page, basically you see the results. You see the results of the survey respondents in terms of high or somewhat high capabilities along all these 32 topics. And they are ranked on the left side, basically from top on 1, where health and safety is the capability with the highest agreement, to the lowest one, which is the digital AI and cloud robotics and HR at the bottom. And let me highlight a few kind of key things or takeaways we saw in this, we see in this graphic. So first of all, I think we see some kind of self-critical perspective of HR professionals in this picture, as basically only 2 of these topics, or only 1 of these topics, really exceed 50% in agreement that they have high or somewhat high capabilities. So I think there is a fair reflection what organizations can already achieve, but still it gives a good indication how different the capabilities are set up across all these topics. Another, I think, positive result is that health and safety ranks top. So I think all HR departments were really stressed, and not only the HR departments, the overall organizations, but the HR departments apparently did a good job to feel good that they managed the COVID-19 crisis. And that's why we think health and safety really made it here to the top, that they not only did a good job, but they are also seen they have the right capabilities to weather such a crisis. On the other hand, one needs to admit that current capabilities on important topics like digital AI and cloud is still somewhat limited. So I think that already gives some hint of topics you really need to watch out. As Jens said, we have 113 different countries in this study. So you may wonder if this picture looks different across countries and regions. And that's what we see on the next page. When we basically split the data and we ordered it here, not to the 32 topics, but the 9 major clusters to have a little bit better readability. You see rather a consistent picture. So traditional topics on labor and employee relations rank tops in terms of highest capabilities of current organizations. And you also see that the digital and IT topics rather ranks lowest across all regions and countries. So from this perspective, there are naturally some deviations, and you may already have some considerations why your specific country may slightly look different. And I would encourage you to kind of reflect on this and also put your perspective into the panel discussions later on, that we have a kind of a different perspective on all the different countries we have in this call, what your view is on the slight deviations or the consistency we see here. And the second question we posed was about the future importance of all these topics. And again, you see on the left side of the graph, the rankings of what is the topic with the highest future importance or rated high or somewhat high in the survey, which is topped by people in HR strategy, followed then again by the ranking of the 32 topics. And the lower part you find, again, rather the traditional HR topics, shared services, policy management, where I think they are still important. 60% still say it's a high future importance, so it's not that they are not important, but relatively seen to some others like people strategy, really giving guidance, what of these 32 topics are really the most important ones for your region, for your company, for your organization, followed by very much employee-centric topics like leadership, employee engagement, up and reskilling, a challenge I think many of you and the companies will face, is really seen as kind of the top future importance. And again, if you have a look on the differentiation across the different countries and regions, we see a little less kind of consistency, which I think is also somehow understandable because the different country requirements, challenges are a little bit reflected here. Industries are differently set across the countries, and that also has impact to the HR agendas across these countries and regions. Yeah? And I do not want to kind of pinpoint to many of these kind of slight deviations, and again, rather put it in your hands to discuss it with us in the panel, what your perspective on these future importance is and your specific country perspective, and share your thoughts in the Q&A. So if we now combine these two axes, it basically gives you a perspective on what is the areas with the highest urgency to act.
And that's where I take over. This is now getting the most exciting part, actually, as we now looked at the two rankings separately. And it's getting actually more interesting when we combine those to derive, okay, where should I start? There are a lot of numbers in ranking, but what should I do as a HR leader, CHRO, or someone who needs to define the people management priority agenda? So we did exactly this, and those of you who have already read the report, the Creating People Advantage report in previous years might recognize this matrix, where we have on the one side, on the x-axis, the current capabilities ranging from low to high, and on the other side, on the y-axis, the future importance. And we combine those to derive the most important and the topics that have a strong need to act, which we see now in this red area, where low capabilities combined with future importance exactly where we want to put a focus on. And for this year's study, we identified actually 3 clusters of topics that come out in this red area. First of all, topics that have a strong focus on talent. So coming from leadership, up and reskilling, strategic workforce planning, top talent management, talent management. So you need to know which kind of talent do I need in the future, which skills do I need, and plan this ahead, up reskill your employees accordingly, and also have the leadership in place to facilitate it. Then top talent management is one particular group, but broadly the talent ecosystem management, how we called it. This is now the abbreviation and short version of it. So also a workforce that is not consisting of only contracted employees, but also gig workers, temporary workers, etc. So HR must really now take care of a different group of employees and manage it in the future. Secondly, topics around digitalization in HR, IT, and also people analytics is another group here that we see with those 3 topics coming up. And actually digital, as Philip already stressed, really being the lowest current capability. Surprisingly, actually the future importance by the participants wasn't seen that high, and we can elaborate on this or discuss this even later in the panel. And thirdly, topics that we cluster as the future of work. So where we can also see the pandemic probably has taken a part, which we find in change management, smart work, organizational development, and agile principles. So really defining how and where work will get done in the future, rethinking work processes, but also change and facilitate the change, the transformation that is necessary for HR. Now all the topics, and now you see why we animated this slide to not make it more digestible, to say, with a strong need to act. Exactly those 12 that should be on top of the agendas. Then we have still topics that shouldn't be forgotten, but just in relation to the other ones are not that urgent, and that those we find in the yellow area can be topics with a high future importance, but where capabilities are relatively high, or future importance is seen as rather lower, but also current capabilities are rather low. And here we have a quite long list of topics, and I won't go through those step by step. Lastly, the green area. So in the green area, rather low future importance, rather high current capabilities. So there we say, okay, HR has done a good job and is adequately set for the future. And here we see rather traditional topics, employee relations, policy management in this area. Maybe I pause for a second here if questions already come up, or we should explain anything further than so far. If not, we have a lot of content and also can proceed. Okay, let's maybe wait for the panel also to discuss then. Well, besides those 32 topics and this key question on current capabilities, future importance, we also looked at the future role of HR. So which role should HR play in the future? And here, what we found quite interesting is that the perception between HR and non-HR respondents was quite differing still. So non-HR respondents rather are hesitant to see HR as strategic, innovative, competent actor within the organizations today, which we can support with the following 3 statements. So we asked those hypotheses to the respondents and asked again the agreement to those statements. And for the first one, where we said, okay, HR leaders demonstrate business acumen, making decisions based on long-term considerations and the strategic needs of the organization today, we have an overall agreement of quite high, 67%. However, driven mainly by the HR respondents was 71 compared to the 54 of non-HR respondents. The second one also where HR as a competent, innovative, and important actor in the organization that has influence on strategic decision-making. Again, almost the same numbers, 66%, 69 for HR, 54 non-HR. So the split is really quite big for those two statements. It narrows a bit down for the last one. HR has dedicated teams with really deep expertise. At this point, it's really important for all results, actually, but especially here to a bit interpret. So they mirror the perception of the respondents, right? It's the perception of HR, non-HR in this particular analysis. It doesn't say that HR does not have business acumen or that is a fact, but it's really just the perception of the respondents. So it's also how they interpret it. Besides the role of HR itself within the organization, we also ask questions on the employees. So, and to what extent an employee-centric HR will be necessary in the future. And we found actually very strong agreement here. So 85% of all respondents say that focusing on employee needs and expectations is the key success factor in the competition for talent in the 2020s. And this actually is really the highest level of agreement in the whole study, illustrating the importance of the employee-centered approach that we also hypothesized. So there's agreement on it, but it's HR departments are still hindered to really make this employee centricity really possible, hindered by, again, digital and IT. So seamless and also personalized experiences seem really hindered by those digital toolings and also in supporting HR IT system, which we see in the following two statements here. And actually here we see that HR, non-HR is even more aligned on this view. So the digital tools that are really necessary to make employee experiences in the day-to-day tasks related to HR easier, and a strong HR IT that is the basis for everything, but also to bundle, analyze employee data and be a basis for any experience designs. I see, maybe let's finalize this section. We just have one more slide, and then let's address the questions you put up in the Q&A section. So far, really the key highlights of our study. And we also combined with the, so all the data we have in the online survey, we combined this with interviews we led with more than 30 executives, HR professionals around the world. And then, came up with 5 key actions to take based on the insights we could generate here. And those are the following. And probably they won't surprise you, as we already stressed most of the topics already. So first of all, put your employees at the center. This came out in the different rankings and the metrics, but also in the statement. So really, organizations need to think of employees as a real customer and understand the needs to address them and also take them along the journey. Concretely, what to do here. So continuously collect feedback, listen to your employees, also design and upgrade employee journeys and organize HR workflows, not around HR processes, but around the employee perspective, and also individualize career path and learning opportunities. Secondly, shape the future of work, especially addressing a post-COVID world where new work models, remote work models, flexible schedules, and a flexible workplace will be the reality. So here, concretely speaking, a smart work strategy needs to get defined. Also employment options and the workforce structure need to get rethought. And at the same time, the topic of purpose and culture is getting important to really foster affiliation and sharpen it to inspire and affiliate the employee. Accelerate in digital. HR needs to step up in digital IT analytics to enable this future-proof workplace and also a better employee experience, and also to play a strategic role. So to get the IT basics right, but on the same time, focus on digital priorities to make a difference where it makes a difference to the employee, and also improve people analytics maturity. Set new paradigms for skills and employees. So which skills do I need in the future? Plan this, and also then upskill, reskill the employees to really build a learning organization. and at the same time enhance HR expertise to facilitate this. And lastly, with employees at the center, sound digitalization support on board, HR functions need to transform to be the motor of this changing organization and truly serve the employee. So again, a clear strategy is necessary here. The organization also sometimes needs to get rethought. And also HR is not only and merely an HR topic. So people management is not merely an HR topic, it's the topic of any leader. So transform and make all managers to real people leaders to make this possible. So far from our results and insights, the first questions come up. This is a good.
I think that's good. So probably we take the first and the third question. Yeah. They have something directly linked to this study. The second, I would love to also hear the feedback or reflections from the panel, whether HR departments will triple or double at least in terms of budget and size, or what that means, basically the importance that we see. But the first and the third one, I think we can quickly answer. So, I mean, should I give it a first step for those ones? Yeah? So, the first one, yes, that's a good question on the correlation. We don't have the data on the kind of as you wrote, the HR present in the C-suite. Yeah? So naturally, we have kind of CHROs and the senior HR people fill it out. I mean, that's one dimension that we have. We didn't see, again, here any huge difference in the results from the hierarchy. So that doesn't rule out this kind of correlation, but there is not necessarily a direct indication that this is there. And for the employee needs, Steffi, you want to take that one?
Yeah, probably we can refer to another study we did, right? Because here we just looked at HR and the HR function. But when we want to understand the talents better, there we have another study actually published earlier this year, Decoding Global Talent, where actually exactly the needs and expectations and the preferences of talents around the globe are in the focus. And maybe we type in the link to this. Maybe Ruth can do this to look this up, that you can have a reference here to really address, what the needs and expectations are as they are shifting, right?
Yeah, could I perhaps add something, Stephanie? It's Bob
here.
Go ahead.
I think, I mean, it's a superb question. And obviously at the micro level, it's going to depend enormously on the environment, the context, the type of work, the organization itself. But I think it's a really important question, because one of the issues I think that's emerged over the last couple of years in particular is that employees expect trust. You know, trust is a huge issue in organizations nowadays, about whether employees actually trust their leaders, they trust the organization and so on. And it's absolutely critical that trust is the basis of the brand and so on of the organization. And I think it breaks down into sort of 3 or 4 areas. One is employees' expectations are that their leaders demonstrate an absolute competence in doing their job. They also look increasingly, especially the younger generation, they look for benevolence. They look for organizations which look beyond just their own sort of needs. They also look for integrity. It's absolutely key that they adhere to a sense of ethics and purpose and principles that match to the employees' needs, especially the younger generations. And actually, they want consistency. They want organizations to be reasonably predictable over time. So I think that's very much a social, from a macro point of view, it's very much a social approach rather than just purely and simply the individual employees. And of course, there's a whole issue of which generation are you from in terms of what you expect from your employers.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you very much. At this point, let's switch over to the panel and open up the panel as the discussion already opened. And for today, we have Jean-Michel Kais, managing director and senior partner from BCG, being on the panel, Alex Alonso from SHRM, Anthony Ariganello, president from the Canadian Association, actually wearing multiple hats here. Just we have space for one label, but representing several ones. Jorge, past president of the WFPMA, and Aida, president of the Inter-American Continent Association. So thanks for being here. And actually, as we already started the discussion, and I know Tony also had an idea on the last one, right, on the employee needs and expectations, I would directly hand over to you, Tony. So what's your thought here on this one?
Sure. Thank you, Stephanie. Hello, everybody. Well, just the two questions that came up, you know, with respect to increasing the size of the HR organization. As someone who's, you know, been in the C-suite, been CEO for a private sector organization, I can tell you that is definitely not going to happen. Clearly, that's not something that you're going to look at increasing staff in HR. I think what really is going to happen is HR is going to have to be more creative and use tools to essentially, you know, be able to work smarter and do their work quicker and better and be much more productive. And that, I think, is where it points to the fact that we need to accelerate, you know, the essence of digital transformation and using artificial intelligence. So again, tools to work smarter and quicker and be more productive, so that HR can be more strategic, you know, rather than be administrative. I think that's really the future, in my view, on that one. And with respect to employee needs, I think what we've seen during this pandemic, and clearly it's been demonstrated globally, is that, you know, employees really are looking for much more of a work-life balance than ever before. Clearly, what we've seen is that an approach working from home, you know, has demonstrated to be extremely productive, and also employees to be trusted on. I think many in the corporate world, if you will, especially those in the C-suite, perhaps in the past weren't sure if people could be productive, if people could be trusted, sadly. But what we've seen in the last year, or I guess 15 months, is that the answer to that is definitely. And I think employees are seeing that, and it's going to become more of a requirement when you look at employees and what their demands are. So I think it's going to move away from compensation and more on the issue of being able to have quality of work. So I believe that's really something that employers are going to be keeping in mind, and HR, of course, when they're hiring. Those are, you know, to me, are one of the key essences of the employee needs and expectations. So those are my comments with respect to that, Stephanie.
Thank you.
So,
go ahead.
Oh, no. So I was just going to echo what Tony was saying, yeah, in regard to both of those responses. And I'll share with you two perspectives. The first dealing with what will happen to the actual HR function. I'll share with you that I have been in HR going on 30 years, and I've never once seen a situation where the HR function actually grew despite the fact the need for it to grow. So having been in the C-suite now for the last 10 years, I'll share with you what I anticipate is not the notion of being more effective, but also the notion of being changing and redefining what it is that the profession can be. And so we hear this quite often. I've heard individuals such as the CEOs of major enterprises, including some of the biggest retailers we've ever seen, speaking primarily around what it is that they want to see. And they are looking for HR to define itself as a hub for innovation. And Tony, to your point, digitalization and accelerating that digitalization is the way we go about doing that. Now, to link the other perspective, I think one of the things where we see digitalization having and digital capacity having a real impact is in putting employees first and putting their context first. The only thing that I would highlight specifically is that we be mindful about which employees we're doing that for. And I think about what my colleague Vinitsa Nair, the CEO of HCL Technologies, the founder and CEO, used to say, which is put employees first, but put the right employees first. And make sure that you're doing it in a way that is contextualized for them and don't assume their needs. The worst thing that we do is actually put together employee needs and put together perspectives on employee needs without actually accounting for the fact that they are looking for customized and personalized perspectives.
Yes. Yeah. If I can add,
okay,
Stephanie.
yeah, sure. Go ahead, sure, yes.
I mean, I could I'm agreeing all along with Tony and Alex, but also we need to have a different perspective of what HR is actually doing right now. In order to understand employees' needs, we need to be more positive. We need to be more assertive, more empathic, because that can create a relationship which can be bound to management, to have a more engaged staff. And if we get to obtain that, we have a good opportunity to empower those people to have more confidence, and that will be at the end of the day an increase in productivity, an increase in well-being. In what people are very concerned nowadays is what is good for me, what is good for my family, but it's also what is good for me in the office, in the organization. That is important. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Aida. Thank you. I think Jorge is also speaking. You need to unmute.
Yes, certainly. Now you're listening to me, right?
Yeah, sure.
I will add what my colleagues have said, and I fully agree with that. But the study also shows us that leadership behaviors and development, as in the last 3 studies, have been the top 3. Actually, the 2021 is #1 in people capabilities of future importance, which is people and HR strategy. And but it has to be based on what the employee needs, and certainly our companies and most of the companies have tools to detect what the employees are positioning as top in their own needs in the organization. So I just want to highlight that the leadership is involved with the title of this study, which is creating people advantage. And I think that has a lot of meaning in the name of this global story. So just want to highlight on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. Actually, we have another question from the participants, which is the employee experience is mainly impacted by the quality of management. Where is the data and reflection on this? HR can be superb, technical expert, and the organizational culture still be toxic because of management. Does any one of you panelists want to comment on this one, on this perspective?
So I'll jump in here in large part because our research over the last 3 or 4 years has been focused primarily on this. In fact, we've seen from our research alone that there's roughly $223 billion of waste globally every 5 years when it comes to employees leaving organizations because of a toxic manager. And we know for a fact that 56% of employees argue that they have at least considered leaving because of a toxic manager. What's even more jarring about this is that when we look at CEOs and we survey the top 200 CEOs 4 times a year, we see that the #1 thing that they want CHROs to do is to deliver on the promise that they are creating better people managers. 64% of CEOs say this from the top 200, Fortune 1000, as well as the Russell Index 1000. Now, keep in mind, that's a tall task and a tall order. But what I think of when I think about this is what it is that we're doing to arm people managers to be more effective when thinking about the toxicity that's generated. And it is frightening to me. I think about even my own experience as a people manager early on in my career and how little we were provided in terms of the kind of guidance that was required. I was a strong technician who later became a people manager, but it took me forever to be a strong people manager. When I think of this, I think of the words of Jim Clifton, who's the CEO and chairman for Gallup organization. And the first thing that he highlights is make sure that you're doing something to make your managers managers. And that is something that gets lost over and over again. And I strongly think that this is an area where, based upon the data from CEOs, based upon the data from employees, we have alignment across the board that it is that manager who is the cultivator of that people experience. And it's important that we take advantage of that opportunity, not just to eliminate toxicity, but then to generate positivity, as Aida was referring to earlier.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks a lot. Again, you wanted to comment, Aida? Or did I?
Yes, exactly what Alex said. We just want to I think we need to work first on our managers, because if the manager doesn't know what he's good to give out to other people, then we are wasting our time in doing other strategic plans and other strategic objectives, because we need to work on ourselves first so we can provide the needs and services that people are knocking on the door for us, because sometimes we don't even know where we want to go. That's my opinion.
Yeah. So this is all about this relationship between business and HR also, and that it's actually a liaison, right? And Jean-Michel also here, which struggles do you see here, or which shifts need to take place in this relationship?
I mean, I could not agree more with what was said. I mean, the relationship with the manager is the primary reason why people leave a company, and not compensation, not whatsoever. And secondly, we also made some studies showing that, you know, in the leadership traits, what differentiates most the best leaders, it is the appreciation, the consideration that the managers give to their employees. So yeah, I could not agree more on that thing.
Yeah. What we also said is this topic of employee centricity, right? And also stressed in the questions already and in the data we saw. What actually which kind of influence did we see through the pandemic to become more employee centric, or is there an influence we can see, Tony, to develop more in this direction?
On the employee centricism, you mean?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, again, I think one of the key lessons learned is that employees can be.
Oh.
Tony, you went back to mute.
I asked to unmute.
Sorry about that. The usual Zoom features. As I was saying, I think one of the key lessons learned is that employees can be trusted to be more productive and efficient, even if working from home. However, it's really important to stay connected so that the bond between the two is maintained, and that the culture, which was just asked as a key question, of the organization is preserved. That's really important. I think everyone was really concerned over the last 15 months, especially with that shift from, you know, to work from home, whether a culture within an organization can still be maintained and preserved. I think a large part of the organizations have done a great job, and that means having regular opportunities to voice their thoughts with employees, hear ideas and concerns amongst employees. That's really key. And also ensuring the team dynamic is maintained, which then preserves excellent mental well-being. I mean, everyone's heard about the effect of mental wellness over the last 15 months, the fact that people have been isolated, alone, a lack of connection, lack of, you know, I guess, fostering creativity. So the organizations that have been able to do really well over the last 15 months have been those that have been able to preserve that well-being amongst the staff. And that is having regular updates, regular meetings, connection, even some, you know, breaks to have some wine and cheese at the end of a Friday, for example, every month end, even though you're doing it via remoteness like Zoom, etc. So I believe employers really understand the needs better now than they ever have. And I think, if anything, the pandemic has really moved us quickly to that paradigm shift, to understanding what employees really need. So I think that's really key for you know, employers to understand that a focus should be on the employee if you really want to maintain your productivity and attain overall your strategic goals.
Yeah, yeah. Again, when we look on the results we just presented and the key things we learned a few minutes ago, is there something that surprised you, Jorge, something that stood out to you when we first saw it?
Yeah. Yes, thank you, Stephanie. Yes, I saw that, I noted that labor and employee relation and performance rewards and engagement and talent acquisition were equally mentioned as the top capability ranking by both HR and non-HR respondents in the survey. So I think that that part of getting closer to the employee is key in terms of employee relations. And I was kind of a bit surprised after a special critical year by the pandemic. That's still important, and at the end, it makes sense in some way. Thank you.
Thank you, Jorge. And I think also, Tony, you also wanted to answer to this on the surprising fact or something that stood out to you personally.
Yeah, I think, you know, what surprised me was that digital AI and robotics in HR ranked so low in terms of future importance, 25th. I believe I saw it on the chart. Yet, despite it's the lowest ranking in terms of current capabilities, I think that really surprised me because as we've seen and heard from leading experts, AI is a huge game changer. It's here to stay. Billions of dollars are being spent in this area every year. So HR will most certainly be affected, especially on the administration front. You know, in other words, eliminating administration so that HR can be more strategic. So I think perhaps it speaks to the fear of change or unpreparedness and just the lack of this huge unknown space. But clearly, it is a key priority because when you list, you know, the future importance, it's, I think, that in the top 12. I think it's 12th on your list. So clearly there's a bit of a disconnect there for me, but AI is here and HR is going to have to make use of it so that they become stronger, better, and again, focus on value add activities as opposed to administrative. And I think that will help move away the notion, if you will, of non-HR professionals who think perhaps HR is not as strategic. I mean, there's a clear gap between HR professionals and non-HR, about a 15 to 20 point gap. And I think you need to close that gap. And this is one of the ways that we can.
Yeah, thank you, Tony. And sorry, and one comment here as this comes up again and again, this is our third webinar and everybody or always we had one person who said, this is so surprising that the digital is so low in future importance. And I think that's also key to discuss the results, right? Because it just reflects the perception, why is it so and how to interpret and actually how to weigh them and also put then the agenda on and exactly what we are doing, use the results as a discussion basis to then come up with the conclusion. And I think I interrupted somebody who wanted to answer also on this.
That was me.
That was Aida and then me. So go ahead.
Okay, yes. Then go ahead. Yes, ladies first.
Yeah, but what you just said, that's exactly what I think. I think HR should be more savvy on technology because we are already there. We cannot wait for the future. The future is here. And we need to provide more efficient service, more efficient data. And how can we do that if we are working from home? Through the data, through the technology. So we have that. I'm so surprised that the results show digital so low. Very surprised. But again, you just said it, people have different perception and different expectations. But I would say for me, this is number one.
Aida, you raise an excellent point, and it's interesting because I think of research that came out from Mercer just last year that dealt specifically with the notion around why it is that there is a disconnect between HR and technology. And in many cases, one of the things that they highlighted is that HR views it as a requirement in terms of how they go about creating that personalized employee experience. And they're thinking about that, not necessarily using it from a perspective of analytics. In other words, we HR professionals divorce analytics with what is the digitization. And at the end of the day, for those of us that are most savvy, we know that the two go hand in hand. Our end users are looking for data and analysis from us, whereas our employees are looking for personalized experience. We, when it comes to these tools, are looking for automation. And that's where the disconnect is. And so a lot of what we've seen over the last year is thinking about how it is that the pandemic really focuses on automating what we can create. But in reality, the value add, as you describe it, is the data that we can generate to inform future employee experience. And that's where I think there's real value in this. I agree that it was stunning for me to see how low it was on this list, though, Tony.
Yeah. Yeah, we have actually some more questions from also the participants, and one is on the performance management as one key part of what people managers or just leadership needs to do, right? And then so a continuous performance management here with frequent and regular meetings that is seen as really important, deepens trust between supervisor direct reports instead of a traditional on annual performance appraisal review. And here the question is, what does the panel think about this continuous discussions, feedback, and meetings? Does anybody want to take this question? So yeah.
I'll take this one first because it came from a colleague of mine, former colleague, Howard. It's always good to hear from you. But interestingly, I'm a big proponent of this in particular. And one of the things that we're seeing through our innovation laboratory here at SHRM is an investment in apps that allow you to be able to do this more efficiently. For instance, Savvy app is a very common one now that looks at how you go about doing this and tracking so that it is dialogue. Not that it is a continuous performance management perspective, but that it's an ongoing dialogue about here's what I would have tweaked in your performance. Here's what I would have done differently. And what we found in particular is that this model also allows an easier kind of paradigm for employees to provide feedback to their managers. And that's something that we haven't really seen. It's almost a more comfortable way of thinking about 360. So in my mind, there's some real benefit to this kind of perspective, and the technology is there to support it, which is even better.
Thank you.
Could I just jump in briefly, because I know we're struggling for time. I just completely endorse what Alex has said. And yes, Howard, it's great to see you again, or not see you, but hear from you. There's a great example. One of the world's largest chemical companies, or in fact, the world's largest chemical company, which is German, has abandoned the traditional annual performance appraisal. And I can tell you their managers and directors and employees are delighted. And they've actually replaced it with a performance development discussion rather than continuous performance management. And this has been incredibly beneficial and effective, and freed up an awful lot of time, I may say. So, you know, I'm completely endorse this approach.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Bob, for this perspective and example also. A bit looking at the time, let's wrap up the session. And Jean-Michel, especially as you know the data and the results quite well already, why is this study so important? That also a bit promotion on why to read it, right? For you, why is this so important?
Well, first of all, it's so interesting because we are at the time of total disruption for HR, and it's fully reflected in the study. You see the results. Well, to tell that, I mean, HR has done a great job through the pandemics. You know, health and safety is doing so that's good, but everything else is changing. The way we work, you know, the way we lead, the way we organize HR and have the relationship with people, everything is changing. People expectations are changing. So yeah, it's many things are need to be disrupted, and it's HR to do it. So it's super interesting. Second, this is the best study ever that you will see. Matters first because there are more than 6,600 respondents, but also because it reflects fully what HR people think about the future priorities, and not only what they think now about future HR priorities, but also it puts it in perspective with the past, because we have data since 2008, and it puts it in perspective with what line managers think. So for all of these reasons, richness, number of people, perspective, you need to read that, and it's free. So that's the last reason.
Thank you very much for this promotion, and hopefully we could whet some appetite for the final report to come out soon. Well, let's wrap this up now as this time flies. And again, Bob and Jens, and also Tony representing the North American continent for some closing words. And whoever wants to start of you.
Well, I'll kick off and just be quite brief. I think the very important thing for me is to remember when people look at the more detailed results, which will be out on the 30th of June, to remember to contextualize those to their particular environments. I think that's particularly important. The other thing is that we mustn't forget that we need to develop the HR profession. There are some real challenges here. We have to navigate some extremely challenging situations. And as we've heard from just the highlights of the study, there are some key areas we need to take action on. So it's really important that as professional associations, not just the World Federation, but our members across the world, that we continue to focus on the developing the capability and the professionalization of human resources. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anthony, you want to go next?
Oh, sure, for sure. I just want to say, I guess, a couple of things. One, to thank all the participants. Clearly, as Jean-Michel said, we had 6,600 participants globally, which is a first representing our profession. I think it's clear that HR is not only here to stay, but it's a profession that needs to be reckoned with, and people are seeing that every day. And people are coming to the profession as we see that it's growing globally every single year, which is a real positive. You know, I hope the study, or at least some of the input we've shown you today, or the output, I should say, that we've shown today has been reflective of some key decision items that HR can rely on and help build towards a growing future. And stay tuned for the report that will be tabled at the end of the month. And more importantly, the national bodies will disseminate this information. Everyone for participating today, those that could join us. And I know we're also recording this for future dissemination. So thank you, everyone.
So maybe just last few words from my side. So first of all, again, thank you everybody for participating, first of all, in the survey. Thanks of all to all the also national HR associations who have helped us to put together all this relevant data. And I think even today it was a great discussion already, right? Without having all the detailed results in front of us. But I think if you look at the HR functions a little bit from the distance, I think it's one of the most critical functions that you have in organizations, right? I mean, we are all suffering under the current COVID crisis, and the COVID crisis had actually started to change the way we work. It's a huge transformation that is coming, and HR is actually at the center. And therefore, to find some outside-in information, you know, what are priorities from companies in similar industries, from similar regions, but also globally, hopefully it helps you to take the right decisions in these difficult times. And we are really looking forward to all the discussions that are going to follow also on a country level. And if you have any questions, reach out to us. We are happy to discuss with you. It was a great webinar today. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, and some logistics on how to get this report. So those of you who participated, so all of you will get it via email. As a thank you also for participation. The members of the country associations will receive it via their association. The online version of the report and also PDF download will also be on the website, or just write an email to creatingpeopleadvantage@bcg.com. And there we can then also respond and provide you with a report. So thanks a lot also, and have a good day and enjoy the read as soon as the survey and the results will be published next week. Thank you.
All the best.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.